Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller film named The Devil's Bath. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with Agnes, who was a pure-hearted young woman. Though her life was impoverished, she was filled with joy and contentment. Surrounded by a small, lush forest, it had been her playground since childhood. Every flower, tree, bird, fish, and insect was a treasured companion. She crafted a flower crown for herself and carefully wrapped the insect corpses she had collected. Today, Agnes was leaving home. By noon, she would marry a man from the neighboring village. Her mother and elder brother had exhausted the family's savings to prepare a cart full of dowry for her. The three of them pushed the heavy load down the road, panting from the effort. Yet Agnes's heart was light and aflame with anticipation. On such a sunny day, the church would radiate a holy glow. Agnes beamed a honey-sweet smile, basking in the blessings of the entire village. The wedding proceeded smoothly, and Agnes arrived at her new home to undergo the essential entry rituals. The flower crown she had woven was removed by her mother-in-law and replaced with an ornate headscarf. An apron symbolizing household duties and a cloth doll representing her responsibility for childbirth were handed to her. As long as she fulfilled these two duties, she would be considered a worthy wife. Her husband, Wolf, also had a ritual. Blindfolded, he swung a tool to kill a rooster buried in a pit, a test of his strength and precision. However, after several failed attempts, Wolf gave up, and someone else completed the ritual for him. The wedding celebration continued, and Wolf excitedly led Agnes into the forest to show her their new home. He grinned with joy, but Agnes could not smile. She didn't understand why, despite his family's farmland inheritance, Wolf had insisted on relocating to such a remote spot. Most upsettingly, he had sold all her dowry to purchase the house without consulting her. Agnes told herself that men were like this, proud and self-assured. To build a happy life, she had to learn to compromise. Thinking this, she forced a warm smile and joined Wolf in discussing how to furnish their new home. The night grew as dark as ink. Although exhausted, Agnes graciously entertained the guests. Amidst the festivities, she noticed Wolf tipsily chatting with another man, laughing and complimenting his good looks. When the celebration ended, Agnes's mother and brother prepared to leave. The journey home was long and arduous, and they had to set out before dawn. Before departing, her brother handed Agnes a cloth bundle containing a severed finger, a talisman for fertility, imbued with their family's earnest blessings. Back in their new home, Agnes prayed to God, kissed the finger devoutly, and placed it carefully under the bed. She eagerly anticipated the bridal chamber's consummation. However, a drunken wolf collapsed into bed and fell asleep, snoring like a pig. Even as Agnes shyly removed her clothes and approached him with her naked body, he rudely pushed her heavy body away. Stunned and filled with conflicting emotions, she eventually fell asleep without a man, but to the sound of his piggy snores. At dawn, Wolf was nowhere to be found. Agnes decided to search for him at her mother-in-law's farm, though she had no idea which direction it was. She asked the village children for help, but they laughed and abandoned her deep in the forest. Lost, Agnes stumbled upon a sacrificial altar. Atop it sat a headless female corpse. Agnes recognized the story of this woman, a mother who had murdered her son and then offered herself as a sacrifice. The finger her brother had given her must have come from this corpse. The sight of the decaying body turned her stomach, and she quickened her pace. After what felt like an eternity, she reached her mother-in-law's farm. Everyone was busy casting nets and catching fish, including Wolf, who ignored her. Her mother-in-law, with a cold expression, immediately set Agnes to work, relentlessly issuing orders. Agnes complied without complaint, but her efforts were still criticized as insufficient. When the church bell rang, Agnes knelt to pray, reciting a few verses of the Bible. Her mother-in-law impatiently interrupted, accusing her of slacking off. In this deeply devout community, Agnes's faith was seen as a virtue, yet her mother-in-law dismissed it as laziness. To teach her a lesson, her mother-in-law assigned her to lift heavy fishing nets, a task that required the strength of men. Even the workers expressed concern and tried to plead on Agnes's behalf, but her mother-in-law would not relent. At lunchtime, Agnes distributed food to the workers. When the strongest among them asked for an extra piece of cake, Agnes generously agreed. However, her mother-in-law snatched it away and harshly reprimanded the worker. After the grueling day, Agnes followed Wolf home in silence. She did not confront him about abandoning her or remaining silent while his mother chastised her. Instead, Wolf scolded her, blaming her choice of impractical clothing for the day's difficulties. Everyone says that working to support the family is a man's duty, while managing household chores is a woman's obligation. However, women must work alongside their husbands, but men resolutely refuse to do any housework. When Agnes dragged her exhausted body to cook dinner, her mother-in-law would always hover nearby, making sarcastic remarks about her being from a poor family and not knowing how to properly serve her husband. She believed Agnes should pray while cooking, reciting the prayers 10 times to ensure her husband would enjoy his meal. Agnes obeyed everything, hoping her mother-in-law would leave her alone. She longed for nightfall, praying for the divine blessings to help her become a mother. However, Wolf refused to touch her sexy body, making the hope of having children impossible. No matter what happened, Agnes always thought of others and blamed herself. She believed she wasn't gentle enough and assumed that other women must be more proactive with their husbands. Gathering her courage, she tried again to express her love to Wolf. Yet he merely covered her exposed body with a blanket and quickly fell asleep like a pig in fat. Agnes quietly got up, suppressing her sobs as her shoulders trembled uncontrollably. Her yearning for a child grew stronger. Agnes frequently visited the church to pray to the Holy Son, pleading for the blessing of a child. One day, while washing clothes by the stream, she saw her mother-in-law glancing at another woman washing her menstrual cloth. With disdain, her mother-in-law scolded the woman, calling her a barren hen. Agnes felt deeply embarrassed, knowing the remark was directed at her. Despite her sorrow, Agnes found a glimmer of solace in an unexpected friendship. Her new friend was kind and generous. Agnes admired her hairpin, and the girl cheerfully gave it to her. The two walked through the forest together and chatted under the shade of an ancient tree. For a while, Agnes rediscovered the joy she once felt in the fragrant meadows. But upon returning home, her mother-in-law's dark expression reminded her that she had made a mistake. She had lost track of time and missed preparing dinner. Her mother-in-law had already prepared a meal for Wolf and even fed the pigs, but she intentionally left Agnes out, instructing her to chew on a pickled fish head instead. According to her, it was a foolproof remedy for conceiving. Agnes hurried to make amends, but Wolf, noticing her absence during dinner, threw her cherished insect specimens into the fire. Agnes said nothing but quietly took note of everything. In her grief, Agnes built a small shrine in a hidden burrow and prayed through the night without moving. Before dawn, she was already at the fish pond, hoping her diligence and endurance would win over her husband and mother-in-law. Yet all she received were cold remarks. That night, a man hanged himself in the village. His body was swiftly taken away to prevent his mother from holding a funeral. As Christians believed, suicide condemned souls to eternal torment in hell, making the corpse impure and unworthy of burial. On a bitterly cold autumn morning, Agnes felt a sharp pain in her abdomen as warm fluid trickled down her legs. Terrified of being mocked as barren, she hid in a filthy pond to clean herself, repeatedly soaking her frozen undergarments. Finally, she endured until lunchtime. The friend, now visibly pregnant, asked Agnes for an extra piece of bread, arguing that she was eating for 2. But with her mother-in-law nearby, Agnes could not comply and silently shook her head. Angered, the friend cursed her and left. Agnes's heart ached as her dreams continued to wound her. She began to hurt herself to numb the inner pain, hoping the blood from her wounds would mask her despair. Yet even her small delays earned scorn from her mother-in-law, who complained to Wolf about Agnes's incompetence and lack of respect. Unable to bear the accusations, Agnes fled into the forest, hoping some man would come to comfort her using his muscles. But no man came. When she finally returned to her mother's home, she found solace in the pigsty, only to be dragged back by Wolf and her brother. The humiliation left her bedridden, earning her more disdain from her mother-in-law, who blamed her for everything from failed crops to the goat's parasites. Her mother-in-law and husband eventually took her to a healer, who subjected her to cruel treatments. A needle pierced her skin, embedding a strand of hair into her neck. The healer claimed it was a detoxification method that would rid her of sorrow and pain. One day, Agnes found an abandoned infant by a stream. Overjoyed, she brought the child home, only to be met with disgust. Her mother-in-law demanded she have her own child while Wolf sighed, ordering her to return the baby. Agnes, filled with despair, envied her friend and every other woman blessed with motherhood. Her grief led her to poison herself slowly, hoping for Wolf's attention. When her husband discovered this, he decided to return her to her family. The woman who once brought a dowry of treasures left with nothing but dirty clothes and a broken spirit. Shamed and abandoned, Agnes sought vengeance in the forest. She lured a young boy with sweet words and ended his life with a blade, whispering that she was sending him back to meet Jesus. Agnes confessed her crime at the church, offering herself as a sacrifice for her sins. On the day of her execution, she stood on the altar singing a hymn with serene eyes as the executioner raised his blade. Her head fell and the crowd cheered. Her body was desecrated and her remains were sold for profit. Agnes was a victim of a cruel and oppressive society, twisted religious dogma, and unyielding traditions. Though her crime warranted justice, the price she paid reflected the brutality of her world, where humanity's laughter masked its collective ignorance and apathy. This harrowing tale is not fiction, but an adaptation of historical records from the 17th century. Over 400 similar cases have been documented, a sobering reminder of humanity's capacity for both cruelty and neglect. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.